I'm very pleased tonight to introduce Charlie Vascellaro, who's going to be our speaker. Charlie is primarily a freelance writer, and he has a relationship with two museums of note. He was a consultant for, I think, about a year, right, Charlie? As a
Yeah.
communications program coordinator for the Jackie Robinson Foundation and Museum, which is in Lower Manhattan's Tribeca area on Varick Street. And I know it's perhaps difficult for me to ask individuals from Minnesota and Wisconsin to visit New York, but it's a very impressive museum. And as long as I've encouraged you to go to New York and do that, go to Baltimore, where you can see the Babe Ruth Birthplace and Museum on Emory Street, very near Camden Yards. And Charlie worked there for quite a while as well. His publications have appeared in many noted uh, newspapers, the Washington Post, the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, USA Today, and the Village Voice. And in fact, if you go to your browser and it type in Charlie's name in the Village Voice, you can find a list of a number of articles, including one that relates to tonight's talk. He's also the author of Hank Aaron, a biography that's part of Bloomsbury, excuse me, Publishing's Baseball All-Time Greatest Hitters series. And last summer, Charlie covered the Rickwood Field game between the Cardinals and the Giants for the Cooperstown Crier. He'll refer to that a little bit. Charlie's also been a frequent speaker, as I've been fortunate enough to be at the Cooperstown Symposium and the 9 Spring Training Conference in Tempe. And speaking of Tempe, if any of you are Rhodes Scholar members, as I am, Charlie has a class in Scottsdale that's a big favorite amongst Cactus League visitors. Charlie grew up on Long Island. He's a New York Mets fan. I won't hold that too much against him as a Cincinnati Reds fan primarily. He's a member of SABR's Babe Ruth chapter, and his Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism is from Arizona State University, which um, is close to where SABR's headquarters. In fact, they're in the journalism school, the Cronkite site, which is probably a different location from where you went to school, Charlie. But
It is, yeah.
it's for some reason Arizona State is on its way to having 100,000 students, and one of the things that they're trying to do is have baseball and sports across the curriculum. So many departments have a particular interest in sports. So I'm very happy to finish my introduction of Charlie, let him take over and talk about Rickwood Field and his relationship and time spent there. It's a fascinating story.
Thanks for the introduction, Ed, and thanks to everybody for showing up tonight. I know it's there's a lot going on in the world, and I appreciate everybody uh participating. I'm see Perry Barber just joined the conversation too. So I just admitted Perry, and hi Perry. Okay. I'll get rolling here. Let me shrink this down. So before I get into the talking about last year's game, these photographs that I'm going to show you first as an introduction are pictures of the first time that I ever visited Rickwood. It was 22 years ago, and I was working for the Babe Ruth Museum. I was taking a traveling exhibit around the country, and in our travels, we were setting up the exhibit on the concourse of minor league ballparks all around the country. And we were at the other Birmingham ballpark, where the Barons played, the minor league Barons, not the old Negro League Barons, but the current team, and it was a different incarnation of their ballpark. They have a new ballpark now too. But while I was in town, I was able to take a swing by Rickwood and give myself a self-guided tour. There was nobody there. There was a little flyer in a rack card holder out in front, which had some historic information in it, but you could basically just walk around the place. I love this picture right here with the seats and all the different layers of paint, the different colors that those seats had been over the years. If you look on the ground, you'll also see different colors of, I don't know, I guess it's moss or different kinds of mold that are growing on the concrete. It was a misty, rainy day the day we were there in 2002. I'll show you here's the babe. We took the babe everywhere. So you can see that's our life-size cutout of the babe that I set out in front of Rickwood Field. During the course of our time on the road, I took hundreds of pictures of the babe all over the country. There's that mossy green growing on the concrete of the steps to the ballpark. Some of that, I believe, was cleaned up for this game that they had this year in 2000. I'm sorry, I'm reading a message. In last year in 2024, some of that surface had been power washed, but there's also plenty of it still there. It's the patina of the ballpark is really what it is, and I think that adds some historical context. When you're there, it really does feel like a time warp. If anybody who's been in Rickwood, here we climbed up on the press box that they had a little crow's nest where I guess the PA announcer might have sat, and I'm not sure where I'm not sure who else would have used this because it was a very small little crow's nest on top of the ballpark that we were able to get on top of. You're going to see in the more recent pictures how different this became. The old sunken dugouts, very small little dugout. They were definitely different for the game this year. 22 years ago or 23 years ago, that's the dugout they had. And this wall, which is a little bit further back from the other wall, which is the one they actually use now. And but you can see the historic marker on the field there, and there's barbed wire, and I'm not sure if that's to keep people in or to keep people out. I'm not 100% sure what its purpose was up there, but the dimension 478, if you can believe it, was the original dimension. Now the current outfield wall sits in front of this wall. But it's still there, the original concrete outfield wall. This is Gary Sieradkowski, who worked with me for the Babe Ruth Museum, and we traveled around the country together. SABR people should be familiar with Gary. He draws the cover of every single SABR journal. If you're still subscribing to the hard copies in the mail like I do, that's Gary's artwork that you see on the front cover of the SABR journals. And I believe the clock was right. I think it was about 12:30 or so when we were in there, as I recall. I remember it was, we went and got lunch afterwards. The numbers, they're hand operated scoreboard. You gotta love it, and they just sitting up there. Like in that last picture, you saw Gary was holding a number to let you see. But that's the way the scoreboard was operated back then. Of course, they moderned things up for this Rickwood Classic last year. The entryway looked very much the same. Not much has changed, but that's what it looked like in 2002. But in 2024, it looked kind of the same. They had cleaned it up, and there was some signage and some different promotional things hanging around. Didn't look quite as desolate as this, but the turnstile type entrance was still intact. And there he is again. The babe's up there. He's everywhere. And we had a lot of fun moving him around, but I love that picture. And you can see the grandstand and the seats from this angle. It's funny, you don't quite capture the paint changes that you saw in the other ones, but it is the same day. The ones back under the covering look like they had been painted once gold and were a little bit more protected from their colors changing. Here we are. Okay, this was the beginning of it. So the fan fest type atmosphere that was created outside of the ballpark was remarkable, and it was huge. It was expansive. It was an outdoor museum, and these kiosks had all the stories of the Negro Leagues legends. If you recall, last year during the season, there were constant celebrations of Negro League Baseball. There was this general acknowledgement and recognition. They had the East-West Classic game, which was played in Cooperstown. I was fortunate enough to be there as well. And then this one as a follow-up. All of this work that you see here was created by the Canopy project management firm. That's Janet Marie Smith, our famous favorite daughter here in Baltimore, the designer of Oriole Park. She's a executive director of development and planning for the Dodgers right now. She works for the Dodgers, but she also has this company that she founded. There's another woman named Fran Weld is the president of the company. She worked with Janet in Boston and also worked for the Giants for many years. But this group, the Canopy Group, which has its offices here in Baltimore, created all of what you see out here. And there was a lot to see. The text, the narrative, if you really wanted to spend the time, it could have taken you a good couple of hours to move through all of this. And it was open all day. So even when the game wasn't going on, it was a 2-day, it was a 3-day event actually. And even when the games weren't going on, the Fan Fest stuff outside was accessible. The famous quote that Rube Foster, I believe, took from Frederick Douglass originally, but we are the ship, all else the sea. And you got the heyday of the Negro Leagues, 1920 to 1948. That's the part that's acknowledged in the historical record right now. After 48 is not included in the Major League Register, but that period of time that you see there is included in the Major League Register on sites like baseballreference.com. They created these lockers. This was a Willie Mays locker. They converted the clubhouses into museum installations. And the actual clubhouses that the players used were mobile trailers outside of the ballpark. So they had these makeshift clubhouses because I think the existing clubhouses would probably have been too small for the major league teams and maybe a little too rustic for them as well. But they did a great job of doing things like this with them. This looks like an original scorecard or of some sort to me, with the Black Barons versus Kansas City up here. And a lot of these artifacts came from the Negro Southern Leagues Museum in Birmingham, which if you ever have the opportunity to visit the Negro Southern Leagues Museum, I would highly recommend it. I'm going to get to some photos of that here as well. There's the two. They had two Willie Mays lockers right next to each other there, with all sorts of great stuff in them, autograph balls and different artifacts from different parts of his career, different periods. Here back at Rickwood, there were two games. There was the minor league Rickwood Classic, which happens every year there, but doesn't get quite the attention that it did last year. It was played between Birmingham and Mobile or Montgomery, I think it was. And they wore great throwback satin Negro Leagues uniforms. They set up this makeshift press box. The auxiliary press box was down the left field line because the regular press box has about 8 seats in it. So for the amount of attention that this event got, they needed to blow it up a little bit. And I registered for my media credentials relatively late, which put me in almost the last seat in the press box in the upper corner here, which I did not mind at all because there's better ventilation up there. There's an open space behind where I was sitting, and I could turn around and look at the Fan Fest, and I could see the game quite well. I actually moved to a better seat later on, but that was my assigned seat. And again, you can see this is a new scoreboard that they put up. I don't know if that's still there. They brought it in for the game, kind of a Jumbotron video board. The Rickwood's own scoreboard is very iconic. The one I showed you earlier with the hand-operated numbers, but this was an addition that was added on for the game. There were lots of things like that. For example, there's the iconic Rickwood scoreboard that you see back there, and still looks the way it always did. Some of this advertising may be vintage or period or recreation. I know there was the Cobb movie was filmed at Rickwood, and there was some new signage brought in for that, but I'm not exactly sure. T-Mobile looks kind of modern. Some of the stuff is modern, the Bali, but there was also some vintage. And this pavilion There was all this talk about Willie Mays. Well, everybody was wondering, is Willie Mays going to be in Rickwood for this game? We were almost half expecting to see him show up. And this celebration was a celebration of the Negro Leagues, but it was also very much a celebration of Birmingham's favorite son, Willie Mays, who played in the Negro Leagues in Birmingham and made the transition. And so this building that they called the Willie Mays Pavilion, I believe it was the grounds crews storage yard where they keep their heavy equipment, tractors and things like that. But they turned it into a kind of a VIP cocktail room. And there was a lot of hobnobbing and mingling going on in there. It was just down to the left of where I was sitting, down the left field line. This picture was taken from my seat, so it was that visible. This is another facsimile. It's a recreation created by the Canopy Group, and it is a recreation of what would have been the manager's office at the time. So I love this. The Varga girl on the shelf there, and there's some umpires ball rubbing mud somewhere in there, and old period newspapers, and all sorts of stuff. So just a cool room, and you could duck your head in there and kind of take a look at it. The Babe, of course, the Babe was at Rickwood. Yeah, he was everywhere. And this is a picture of the Babe taken at Rickwood Field in 1929. I'm going to let somebody new into the room here. And a colorized version of the same photo. The Babe always gravitated towards the kids, as you know. And what a thrill for this group to catch up with the Babe back then. Some kind of exhibition game. I don't know what he was there for. In these makeshift clubhouses, they also made a recreation of the Negro Leagues uniforms and lockers. So they tried to depict as many of the significant Negro League teams as you might remember. Here you got the Homestead Grays, the Indianapolis Clowns, which Hank Aaron played on the Indianapolis Clowns as a segue to his major league career. If the Indianapolis Clowns didn't exist in 1952, there's a chance we might never have heard of Hank Aaron. It's an amazing thing to think about. It was the Negro Leagues were waning and disappearing, but there was Aaron playing for the Harlem Globetrotters of the Negro Leagues. They were kind of a clown act. There was all this showmanship and playing around that they did, but they were still a professional team. And Aaron was good enough, played well enough during his brief time in Indianapolis, which I don't even think they played their games in Indianapolis, but he played well enough there to catch the eyes of Clyde Sukeforth, a great scout who discovered Hank Aaron, and the rest is history, as they say. Here in Baltimore, I love looking at the Eli Giants uniform as well. Over here, you can see there's the Newark Bears, there's a Chicago and a Brooklyn uniform as well. This screen was an active live screen of what was going out on the field. Even when you were in this museum exhibit, you could kind of see what was going on out in the world. I was fortunate enough to get there kind of early this day and walking through these exhibits almost by myself. Here's the two participants in the MLB at Rickwood Field game, the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Francisco Giants, but these would have been facsimile, I think, jerseys of earlier of their team, or even perhaps Negro League from those cities. Is a Birmingham Black Barons jersey. These displays, these exhibits were right on the concourse, and they had converted the concession stands into displays, into exhibits. So even where where you're seeing these things, some of these spaces, they really utilized all of the space remarkably. This particular exhibit refers to Hall of Famers from Alabama. And there's the great Billy Williams in there. I see Satchel Paige over here. There's going to be more. Here you got Willie Mays, of course, also from Birmingham. Mays and Satchel Paige represented these photographs. Willie Mays' bat down here. Of course, Hank Aaron was from Mobile. A lot of great ball players came from Alabama, that's for sure. Not all Hall of Famers. Some of my favorites were Cleon Jones and Tommy Agee that came up right behind Hank Aaron a few years later. But Here's Monty Irvin over here. Also, Newark Eagles, um, American Giants, different representations, bobbleheads, Hall of Fame black postcards, all sorts of fun stuff in these exhibits. This was of particular interest to me, the Jackie Robinson lockers. So much Jackie Robinson stuff. Again, they had to make two lockers to put Jackie's stuff in. And this was in the gift shop at the ballpark. They also converted some of the gift shop space into exhibit space as well. And this I was blown away by what they did here for Jack. Here we are at the beginning of the game. This is Montgomery versus Birmingham, the minor league game. These guys, I don't know if you can quite see it, but they're wearing satin Negro Leagues uniforms, replica uniforms, but they were in satin. It was really great. I'm just checking. There's a message in the chat. I want to make sure anybody needs to get in. Oh, Stuart's reminding me about Willie McCovey and Ozzie Smith being from Alabama as well. Of course, how could I leave? Stretch out. Jeez. So this is during the Star Spangled Banner. Okay. There's the new video scoreboard I was telling you about. Throughout the games, the minor league game and the major league game, there was all sorts of history just scrolling by on the scoreboards. It was a very much a multimedia event. There was so much to see and do. It was a real, it was not, your senses were being bombarded. And there was also this element of time travel. You felt like you had traveled back in time a few decades and landed in this, like, I don't know, Twilight Zone episode. I don't know. The umpiring crew, for the first time in Major League Baseball history, all of the umpires were black. And I found that to be rather amazing that never happened before. But I started doing a little research into that exact topic and found out there's only been a dozen black umpires in Major League history. And it took us this long in time to come to a period where there were four employed by the majors at the same time. And so the crew, and it was not lost on them. They were wearing patches on their sleeves with Emmett Ashford's initials on them. So it was an acknowledged part of the event. Okay, this happened during the game. During the game, around the sixth inning, is when the news of Willie's passing came. And it's funny, these video screens that you see up on our in the press box area, we had them laid down flat because they were in the way of our view. But when the word started to spread, and there was this murmur, this rumbling around the ballpark, people were getting text messages. Everyone around the world was discovering that Willie Mays had just passed. And we were, even though Willie wasn't there, this felt like the epicenter of his passing, that everybody who was in town was thinking about Willie and all this Negro Leagues baseball history in Birmingham. And then he decided to go, and it was just completely surreal to be in that moment. We were all wondering if he was going to show up the next day, and then we found out he's gone. Time kind of stopped for a second. I had some video here. I don't know if the audio comes through, but I had some video. They're making the announcement here about Willie's passing. And they just interrupted the game to have this moment. They just kind of stopped things to tell us about this. And I'm just letting that unwind. I don't think the audio comes through on that, but just the video. And there's a little bit more of that here, a similar moment. I was just putting this up on Facebook at the time. And so let me pop out of that for a second. All right. Here was when Willie told us that he couldn't be there. When we found out Willie couldn't be there, see if I can go back. He had to issue a statement. There was so much speculation about whether or not he was going to be there. So he had to let us know. And he issued this statement just the night before. I think the minor league game was on a Tuesday, and I think he issued this statement on Monday night. And I'll read it. He says, I wish I could come out to Rickwood Field this week to be with you all and enjoy that field with my friends. Rickwood's been a part of my life for all my life, since I was a kid. It was just around the corner there from Fairfield, and it felt like it had been there forever, like a church. The first big thing I ever put my mind to was to play at Rickwood. It wasn't a dream, it was something I was going to do. I was going to work hard and be one of the Birmingham Black Barons and play ball at Rickwood Field. That's what I did. It was my start, my first job. You never forget that. Rickwood Field is where I played my first home game, and playing there was it. Everything I wanted. I'd like to be there, but I don't move as well as I used to. So I'm gonna watch from my, but it will be good to see that. I'm glad that the Giants and Cardinals and MLB are doing this, letting everyone get to see pro ball at Rickwood Field. Good to remind people of all the great ball that has been played there and all the players all these years, and it is still here. So am I. How about that? Those are practically Willie Mays' last words. I mean, I can't think of a more appropriate way to say goodbye, to bow out. And the whole timing of this was just magical. And even though he couldn't be there, I thought that was wonderful that he could issue that statement. Here you see some reaction on the field. The umpires are taking off their hats. This person is recording it on her phone. And there it is, where we all found out on that brand new score video board that they put up there. Look what it says here. Aw, shucks. The fans are reacting to Willie's passing. Everything just kind of stopped for a minute or two. Like I said, it wasn't even the seventh inning stretch. It was the sixth inning when it happened. And you see everybody kind of acknowledging this moment. They're standing up, tipping their caps, recording what's happening. Meanwhile, back at the Willie Mays Pavilion, I looked over my shoulder again, and there's that 24 on the wall, and this guy's recording, getting that picture. One thing that struck me that kind of odd, or not odd, but it happened in between innings. They made the announcement. The infielders are taking their infield and throwing their balls around before the next start of the next inning, and just like that, they're just playing ball again. You almost thought for a minute that they would stop. I didn't know if the game would keep going on, but that's baseball, and that's the way it goes. And right in that minute, Willie Mays was moving into the black and white pass while we were still here in living color. With the press section, I turned around. I was sitting next to Barry Bloom, a writer you guys probably know. My friend Barry was sitting next to me, and I turned around and I said, Barry, guess what section we're sitting in? 24. Full moon that night, shining over Rickwood Field, all of the elements, everything that could converge on us really did that night. Here are the players, the end of the Rickwood Classic, and they're shaking hands on the field. I can't even remember who won, Montgomery or Birmingham. There's the umpiring crew walking off the field. I rented this Airbnb back in Birmingham, and it was pretty cool place, but I also had on me, let me go back to it. I had this shirt with me that I got from a fan at a spring training game in Scottsdale many years ago. I was working for the Babe Ruth Museum at the time, and this guy was wearing this shirt. He was actually standing next to me in the men's room, and I saw the shirt on his back. And when he came out, I asked him a question. I said, "What is that?" And he said, "That's our softball team. Which is our jersey. We're called the Willies. And we have a graphic artist, a designer on our team who makes new jerseys for us every year." And he asked me if I had a business card on me, and I gave it to him. And a couple of months later, when I was done touring the country with the Babe Ruth Museum, I opened up my mail, and the guy had literally mailed me the shirt off his back. So I wear it on special occasions. I wear it at spring training games in Scottsdale, and I happened to bring it with me. So when I got back to my Airbnb that night, I just kind of draped it over a chair and getting ready to go to sleep. And this is a replica hat of the Baltimore Black Sox that they gave us at an Orioles game one day, but it might as well have been Birmingham. It looked just very, very appropriate. This billboard was an electronic billboard. And this is the next morning. I'm waking up, I'm having my coffee out on the deck of this Airbnb. It was off to the side of the highway. And the first thing I see when I walk out the door is a giant loss, the Willie Mays billboard. And yeah, obviously the whole city was immediately kind of thrown into this state of mourning amidst the celebration of the Negro Leagues. It was a real cross section of emotions we were feeling. Back at the Negro Leagues the Negro Southern Leagues Museum, there was an event scheduled that next day, and it was a check presentation for the families, the family alumni of the Negro Leaguers. Josh Gibson, Sean Gibson was there. Josh Gibson's great grandson, Rube Foster's grandson was there. Lots of relatives of Negro Leaguers. Jackie Robinson's granddaughter, Sonia Pankey, was there. But this Mays jersey is just part of the regular collection that they have there. They didn't have to pull it out special because he died. It's already part of what's on display in this museum. The memorabilia at the Negro League Southern Museum, Negro Southern Leagues Museum, I think rivals and in some ways might even be broader than what you see in Kansas City. The Kansas City Museum is very photo driven and multimedia driven, but the stuff that this guy has, the proprietor of this Negro Southern Leagues Museum, has really been able to obtain some fantastic, authentic period memorabilia, which is on display in these cases. This case here is particularly devoted to the Birmingham team. This mural, I forgot, I just added this to the slideshow. Sorry about the typo. This was painted on a wall outside around the corner from the place, and it wasn't there because he died. It was part of the event. It was had just been completed, probably a week or two before the event. I don't know how fresh it was. It looked very fresh. When we walked out of the Southern Museum, that's what we saw. Here's some more stuff within the museum. This is a women in baseball display, which includes Mamie Peanut Johnson's jersey and Connie Morgan and Tony Stone, the ones that we're familiar with. Great artifacts. Phil Dixon, Negro Leagues historian. You guys probably familiar with Phil. Probably seen him at different conventions and events, the Malloy Conference or a SABR convention. But that was the first time I ever met Phil. We've been knowing of each other for quite some time, but we were happy to see each other in person. And Phil's a very congenial guy, and we were having a very pleasant introduction at that moment. And I did wear that Willie Mays jersey. Everybody was dressed in suits for this event, and I felt a little out of place when I got there, but I thought I had to wear it. And you can see it's got holes in it up here. But I was apologizing at times to people in the room for not being as well dressed as that. Everybody said it was perfectly okay with them that I was wearing what I was wearing that day. Back at the ballpark for the Major League game, this Fan Fest area, now we're turning this whole event kind of into a Willie Mays memorial. That's what's happening. These flowers were not at the base of that kiosk the day before. They were added that morning. And obviously, of all these kiosks, a lot of people were gravitating to the Mays one in probably greater numbers that they would have gravitated to it if he had not passed the day before. There's a lot of great kiosks you could go around and look at there, but everybody was kind of focused on Willie that day. A little closer look at his kiosk. I mean, I could imagine there were 1,000 photographs taken in front of that thing before the game. Pioneer Reverend Bill Gleason, who played with Willie Mays on that 1948 Birmingham Black Barons team. He's still alive, and that's him getting interviewed. He was one of the I guess the keeper of the flame, a narrator. He possessed the historical narrative of those times. He was the living, breathing piece of that history, and he was very much sought after. While this was all going on, the Birmingham newspapers did a great job of putting out special editions for these games. There was whole feature articles written about this guy, which I really enjoyed learning about. Uh, my new friend Donna, she was the usher of the tunnel behind home plate, which you had to have your credentials if you're going to try and step on the field during batting practice. And she'd be the person to check and make sure you had them. Over the course of the couple of days that we were in Birmingham, she and I became very friendly, and we liked each other. And I just hope I see her again. There is going to be a game there again this year. They're moving the East West Classic on Juneteenth to Birmingham. So maybe if I go back down again, I'll be able to say hello to Donna. You might have seen this bus going around the country. They change it. It's an old Negro Leagues bus, but they do change the paint job on the outside of it. I saw it at the East West Classic, and it was a Kansas City Monarchs bus. And I took pictures of it there in Cooperstown a couple of months before I saw it here. You can go inside it. And I saw this picture of the inside of the bus. I took this picture, and those seats reminded me of something. And I kept saying to myself, why does this look so familiar? There's something familiar about this bus. And then it hit me. I remembered that it was the kids that are from Monet Davis's team that she was on. Were traveling around in this bus for a little while after she had her tremendous run in the Little League World Series. You might remember. And that's her coach from Philadelphia. His name's escaping me right now. But this picture was in the New York Times. And this one is the one I took. You can see that resemblance that I'm talking about there. They took these great team pictures out in front of the famous facade, the entryway to the ballpark. And I thought, boy, this is a great picture. And I happened to be walking around out there while they were posing for these pictures, while they were getting set ready to take the photographs. So I just kind of snuck in, took this great picture on my phone. It almost looks too good. I almost can't believe it. And the Cardinals picture, I got a better angle on because when I went to take the Giants picture, whoever was in the photographer's well kind of told me to move to the side. And then I was even told that I wasn't supposed to be taking the pictures. They said, that's just for the team. That's just for MLB and the team photographers to take these pictures. But it was too late. I already got them, and they're great. Here's me and Barry. So Barry and I were having what I would call a buddy trip. It was like a buddy movie, like Midnight Run, where you're stuck with each other for a couple of days. And I love Barry. And we had never hung around for 72 hours steady like we did. I didn't have a rental car. I just took an Uber from the airport, but Barry had a car. So he was my ride everywhere. He picked me up in the morning. We had all three of our meals together every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then he would drive his car to where the shuttle bus picked us up to take us to the game. And so we were palling around down in Birmingham. I see Barry almost everywhere I go, but that was a special one to share with him. Here he is doing his work. If you follow Barry, he's amazing. He's so prolific. He gets so much work done. He's always somewhere. He's always everywhere. And here he's kind of pounding Tony Clark on some labor issues. I'm not sure what the story he was pursuing there, but I feel like the body language says a lot in those pictures. You can see Barry's really kind of coming after Tony Clark. And I saw Barry the next moments after this, when we were in the waiting for the game to start. He had to file his Willie Mays story on deadline, and we're sitting in that makeshift press box out there in left field, and Barry's got his laptop on his lap, and he's blocking out on all the distractions around him. And in about 30 minutes, he wrote his Willie Mays memorial piece, which I couldn't believe. He turned to me at one time. I scored the game the previous night, and he knew I had it in my book. And he said, "What was the attendance last night?" I just told him the answer, and he got right back to his work. But it was a genuine pleasure to spend that time with Barry and to see him do what he does. So it was already planned that they were going to be bringing Willie Mays Hall of Fame plaque down for the ceremony. This was known. We knew this was happening. And that's Josh Rawitz, the president of the Hall of Fame, and John Shostakovich right there, the PR guy, the communications guy. and Tom Schreiber, the curator. So these three guys are carrying this mount that the plaque was going to be placed on, and they looked to me like pallbearers at a funeral. I was standing behind them, and I said, "This Negro League celebration has really become a Willie Mays memorial, and here come the pallbearers at the funeral, coming to bring Willie's plaque in." I'm just checking these messages. A couple of quote messages. We'll get into these questions after I'm done talking. Barry wasn't that friendly to me. We'll talk about those later. I'm just looking at them right now. Okay, so there they are carrying it in, putting the plaque up. Now it's got flowers on it. Probably wouldn't have had flowers on it if he was alive, but they had to add that, adorn it with flowers. And this was becoming something they moved it into the gift shop. You could go stand in front of it and get your picture taken with Willie Mays plaque. Here's the lineup for the game. Interesting that this was a Negro League celebration. And on the two rosters of the teams that were playing that day, there was only one African-American guy, and it was the shortstop for the Cardinals win. I thought that was a little commentary on the state of the game. I think some of these celebrations that we saw last year, the acknowledgement and recognition of Negro League's history, was to address the fact that there's not as much participation and involvement by African Americans in baseball as there used to be. And I think that these events were trying to foster that. Barry says it's too late. That's another story too. Later after the game, I ran into another old friend of mine, Chad Olson. We worked together in Bowie for the Bowie Bay Sox, and I was the PR guy for that team, and he was the groundskeeper. Now he works for a company called Ballpark Services. It's Murray Cook. You might know Murray Cook. These guys tend to the fields, just like the Canopy Company tends to all the aesthetic things that you see around the ballpark and how everything looks. These guys tend to the ground and how it plays. They convert fields all around the world when Major League Baseball has these exhibitions in other places. These are the guys that put the field, bring the field up to MLB specs. And Chad's wife is a good friend of mine. She worked with me in Bowie as well. And when we saw each other down there on the field, we said, we better take a picture for Ann or she'll kill us. So we got that great shot in front of the 24. Here's umpire CB Buckner, one of the four first all-black crew. You see he's got his EA patch on there and his Rickwood Field patch. When I stopped him after the game, to talk to him about asking if I could get a shot. And he was well aware of the historic significance of what he was participating in. He was still glowing and beaming from it. We just had a friendly little exchange while I took his picture. And here, closing out the event with Barry, I'm mad I didn't buy one of those hats. I bought some pins, but I love that hat that he's got. And of course, I was trying to keep the iconic scoreboard in the frame of this selfie. And there it is, the iconic scoreboard. There's the final score. The Giants defeated the Cardinals 6-5. And I was wandering around. I found a ball on the field out there, which I later placed on Emmett Ashford's grave about a month later. We were talking about Gary Sieradkowski. You saw him up in the scoreboard before. Here's the cover of the journal that he drew. Oh, go back to it. Let me go back again. He drew that in advance of the game for the SABR Journal, that edition of the journal. And he told me that this guy up on top of the scoreboard was inspired by yours truly. He said, Gary told me, that's you up there, Charlie, because we shared that moment together so many years ago. I had the pleasure of meeting Willie Mays out in Arizona a few years ago in 2017 at the Cactus League Hall of Fame luncheon. And I was partially responsible for Willie Mays being inducted into the Cactus League Hall of Fame. And it was a great, thrilling to be able to be that close to Willie Mays and look right into each other's eyes. It's funny when I look at this picture, he looks like he's staring really hard right into my face. And he is, but it's not for the reason you think it is. It's because he can't see that well. And he's just trying to see who's in front of him. And so he gets right up to look at you when you talk to him, because even then he was starting to lose his sight. I'm gonna close it out with that image. And that's we've come full circle back to the front of the game. I guess we can take off the mutes and have a little Q&A if anybody would like to.
Yeah, Charlie, Perry has a story to tell us about Monet Davis and Rickwood Field. So we'll start with her if she can unmute herself. Let's see if we have to unmute everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
am I unmuted?
You are.
All right, I'll turn down the Mets game. So I noted at the beginning of Charlie's talk, which is wonderful. All your pictures are just so fabulous, and I felt like shedding a tear or two while you were talking, Charlie. But I've had the great good fortune to umpire at Rickwood Field quite a few times through an organization called Play at the Plate. And that's what I'm doing over the weekend. There's a tournament going on there. So one time when I was there, I was pretty friendly with Alvin, who was the home groundskeeper. Very nice fellow. I don't know if he's still there. I guess I'll find out. But I would chat with him, quite frequently. And he told me a story about Monet Davis, that when she was there with her team, that they put her in what was also my umpire's dressing room, or the umpire's dressing room, because I shared it with whatever umpires were there. There was not much room, so we made do. So he told me that Monet had been given the umpire's dressing room as her dressing room apart from her teammates, because she was the only girl, and that after the tournament had concluded, she had unintentionally, of course, left one of the spigots on in the sink there, and the dressing room was very rudimentary. There was like a water closet with the commode. It wasn't even what I would really call a bathroom, and a sink. And Alvin told me that she had left the sink running and flooded the dressing room. And I kind of laughed at that. I thought that was sort of funny. I said, "Oh, I hope it didn't, grow mold when it dried out, because Birmingham can be very humid, hot and humid." So a couple of years after that, I actually saw Monet Davis at a women's baseball event, and I joyfully, cheerfully shared the story with her, obviously figuring out that she would not have known that she flooded the dressing room because she had gone by that time. So I told her the story, and I was laughing and smiling when I was telling her about it, and she gave me this look like she was almost offended. And I, just sort of said, "Oh, well, nothing was hurt. No harm was done." It's just, to me, it's a funny story that I tell people, that Monet Davis flooded out the umpire's dressing room at Rickwood Field, but she was not on board with that depiction. So anyway, that's my Monet Davis. She's a very nice young woman. Other than that, I see her fairly frequently, a couple of times a year at events, and she's very courteous and gracious. So, but she did flood the dressing room. So umpiring at Rickwood is such a treat. I mean, they had, before Janet Marie worked her magic, they had displays all over with pictures of double duty Radcliffe and Willie Mays, and it's just such an amazing place to be, and to feel all of that history and drama, and exploration of who we were as a country and as a nation of baseball loving people. So you should go if you ever have the chance. Go, and to the museum that Charlie was talking about too.
Yeah.
Bob has his hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie, I was wondering, the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, there are only something like 356 members. But I read for Rickwood Field that something like 180 plus Hall of Famers have played on that field. And that's really an extraordinary number to have more than 50% of the Hall of Fame played on that historic ground. That really says something, I think not only about the Negro Leagues, but also about major leagues who barnstorm north during spring training, to their home cities. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that, though, because I would think that Birmingham would have been a regular stop off for those teams as an outstanding baseball city throughout the decades.
Well, yeah, and I think one other element that you might not have thought of is it was very active minor league ballpark. So some of that number of Hall of Famers that you're talking about who may have played at Rickwood Field may have also played there during when they were playing in the minor leagues. And that could be in either direction on their way up or getting an assignment back down. The park has also been used for numerous exhibition games over the years. And this game that they played last year, was the first major league game that was ever played on that field. They had major league exhibition games, but the first one that was an official
Hey, Dan.
in-season game.
Good. How are you? Yeah,
Thank you.
I know, they scored as many more runs today than they did on the entire road trip. So, yeah.
Was there somebody else in there?
Yeah, I think Dennis had something. I just muted him to help out on that
Okay.
front. Charlie, you might stop the shared screen, and then I think that would allow us to see everybody in the gallery.
Okay, there we go. Okay. That's better. Okay.
Yeah, I think we should be able to go to gallery view now. There we go. So if anybody wants to ask Charlie a question, feel free to.
Stu's got his
yourself.
hand raised. Stu? Stu has his hand raised, but he's still got the mute on.
Let me invite him to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, Charlie, I was at you there 02, I think I was there a couple years before Sunday morning. There's a youth tournament going on. And what I found under the right field stands were, they still have the stuff from the Cobb movie, the setups. When you were there a couple years later, was that still there?
When I was there in 2002, it was all there. There was a sign on it was printed on the left field wall going down the left field, the front row of the left field wall. It said no betting in this park. And that was put on there specifically for the Cobb movie. There was some great period advertising with whiskey bottles and cigarettes and all the kind of things that you would have seen more often back then than now. That's what all the signage was when I was there. And I looked at it and I was kind of wondering, because it was 2002 when I was there, and I thought it was kind of peculiar. And that's when they told me, I think it might have been on the informational rack card that I had there, that was all. So it's still, the Cobb stuff stayed up for a few years. I think that movie came out around 94. So it had remained part of the look there for a while.
I listened, Charlie, to your presentation to the Babe Ruth chapter, and you had a picture. You had a slide that showed the picture of that no betting sign. So I encourage folks to go if they want to see that sign. Go and listen to that presentation. There's some differences in everybody's presentation, so I encourage you to do that. Stu, I was wondering if you wanted to share your interactions with Barry Bloom.
Is he coming back? Is Stu coming back?
Let's see if I have to ask him to unmute. There you go, Stu.
You know, it wasn't so much me, but Jake Mintz, and you know, Jake's got podcasts and stuff like that. So anyway, this wasn't the first Field of Dreams game, the second one. I got there very early. Mike Teven set me up with a nice, better than spot than I'd actually been assigned. And you know, it's real tight. So I understand somebody shows up and, you know, hey, can you pack it in, squeeze in a little like my computer. And he reminded me of another person I knew who, no matter how, he could always find the most unpleasant way to say something. So it was, do you have to take up so much room? And at any rate, his seat was partially obstructed. And then I went down on the field and I came back and his stuff is gone and somebody else's stuff is there. And he'd just gone over on the other side of the aisle and taken all of Jake Mintz's stuff and moved it next to me, which I tell you what, I was thrilled because I very much enjoyed sitting next to Jake for that game. But you know, it wasn't just he's there early, he can take an unoccupied spot, switch tags. And he just said, who moved my stuff? I said, Barry Bloom was here and he's being a dick. And Jake said, Barry Bloom has been a dick for 40 years. And he gave me an earful of everything. And at any rate, I went down a little later to get something to eat and I came back up and Jake said, you missed it. I just went and chewed his ass so good. And I said, gee, I'm sorry I missed that. So, and Barry went and complained to MLB PR and they didn't seem to give a damn. Maybe they knew him enough. And I just told Jake, if you're in hot water with them, I'll back you up. But at any rate, I'm sure he doesn't even know who I am. That was my
Barry's
one
my good friend, but
interaction.
that's often his default setting. But he's he's the stereotypical, prototypical, cantankerous old sports writer.
Yeah, I tell you what, I enjoyed very much. Jake and he just said, well, good. I'd rather be here sitting here with you than him. So that's the only time I've really ever interacted with Jake Mintz, who's a very interesting fellow with his podcasts and the other stuff that he does.
Come on, don't be bashful. I'm sure there's a few more questions or observations. I do want to echo Perry's mention. It's just a beautiful set of photographs in your slides, Charlie. It really brings to life everything that was going on at Rickwood Field. And so, you know, really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share those with the group.
Well, thanks. I think it's a very photogenic place. I think it lends itself well to being chronicled that way. So I remember being just taken back by it as soon as I got out of the bus there the first day. I said, wow, there it is, you know, and all of what they did really enhanced it. But what a great backdrop, what a canvas to work on. So
yeah, I think when we talked a few days ago, I mentioned the fact that the city of Birmingham has put a lot of money into renovation and preservation of Rickwood Field, and I thought that was to their great credit. And the fact that it was never torn down, that it survived the wrecking ball, that certainly could have, or certainly did happen to so many Negro League parks or minor league parks, major league parks over the years. You know, they're typically not preserved. So the fact that Rickwood is still standing, I think the city of Birmingham deserves some credit for making sure that they didn't just tear it down at some point. And actually the time that I've seen the Barons play, they were in Hoover, not in Birmingham proper.
Yeah, you know, I was so glad to hear that they were playing another game there this year. I just found that out a couple of days ago because I remember when I was walking away from it, I said, geez, I hope that's not a one-off, you know. Perry's got her hand up again.
Yeah, I hit the ask. You should be able to unmute Perry.
And you take them.
Right, you're in to hit that. I hit it a few times.
Here we go. Can you
There
hear
we
me
are.
now?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Charlie, I just wanted to ask you, what was the parking situation when you were there? Because Rickwood is in sort of I mean, it's in a sort of downtrodden neighborhood, and there is not much parking there. So I'm wondering how they dealt with that when you were there.
Yeah, basically they used shuttle buses that left
Ah,
from the it
okay,
was a college football stadium.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
which we were all in the, so you get on the you'd have to get yourself there, and then the
okay.
shuttle would take you the rest of the way.
I got
So
you. That makes sense.
yeah, the people who had cars would find their way to there. So,
Right.
and
Okay.
I would imagine there was a fair amount of Uber riding being done by a lot of people. I did when I first got there, that's how I got there from where I was staying the first time. And then I got caught rides with Barry and the shuttle. So
Okay.
there's not a whole lot around there. Yeah, it's stuck on a couple of corners. It's an old neighborhood. And
Right.
you know, I was thinking about the people who lived in that neighborhood having that event fall on them, you know,
Yeah.
like all of a sudden their quiet little block wasn't so quiet anymore.
So one more quick story about Rickwood. This organization played the plate that puts on the tournaments that I umpire. One time, oh, wait a minute, his name just went right out of my brain. Used to pitch for Boston, Oil Can Boyd.
Oh yeah.
Oil Can Boyd was pitching for one of the teams. And oh, it was such a pleasure to watch him. You could tell he still loved the game. His motion was just smooth as molasses. He was amazing to watch. And he just mowed down the opposing batters with ease. And so after the game, I wandered out into the covered area under the stands right outside the concourse. And he, I guess, was given special parking privileges because he had parked right under there in the shade, in the nice shady spot, and was just hanging out, talking to some of the players, smoking one of the biggest blunts I have ever seen in my life. And he was very nice. He said, "You want some?" Like, no, I'm gonna go take a shower, thank you. Very nice fellow, very friendly, and wow, he can still pitch. That's my Oil Can Boyd story. Dennis Oil Can Boyd.
That's a great guy to be at Rickwood Field. Yep. Dennis. See if we can.
Got it. Thank you.
There
Hey,
you go.
Stu, can I add to your Barry Bloom story? I met Bud Selick was speaking in Arizona when I was living down there at ASU. He has a place where they. Did you get me unmuted? Oh, you got
Yes,
me.
you're unmuted.
And he was speaking down at ASU. He had a foundation that was doing work there, but he'd never spoken to it. And Barry Bloom and I both went up there about the same time. And I saw Barry as I was walking up there. And it was kind of fun watching the dynamic of those two. They were being very nice to each other, and Bud really was hoping he would turn around so he could stab him in the back or something. It was kind of fun. I was just worried that he would associate me with Barry, and there's some things I have to do with Bud that I can't afford to have Barry. I don't want to be brought into, because Barry was pretty tough on Selick and probably deserved it. So yeah.
Barry Bloom at least did get us Barry Bonds at the SABR convention in Miami, which seems kind of amazing.
They like each
Although
other. They're good pals.
as Jake Mintz said to me as he was just ranting that he just said, you know, his best friend is Barry Bonds, and that tells you everything you need to know about Barry Bloom. So any rate, I'm sure Barry had no idea who I was. I was just another guy to blow off, and I didn't much care, but it just got so much more amusing when Jake showed up there.
Yeah, at the time I was living in Arizona, Barry lived close. I'm president of the Milwaukee chapter. Barry lived 19 miles closer to Milwaukee than I did. I just thought it was kind of interesting that, you know. Thanks.
Barry, I just saw a feline in your image there. What's the cat's name?
Her name is Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
All right.
And it's that as an homage to the Beatles, but because all of my cats that I've had the last 20, 30 years have had names that relate to baseball. And when I went with my housemate to get her from a shelter in Florida. And when we got there, that was her name, Lucy, because we live in Port St. Lucie, where the Mets have spring training. Lucy spelled Lucie. And the first thing I did was I turned to my housemate, his name is Joey. I said, Joey, can we change the name? You know, because it has to be a baseball name. And he said, oh, but I like Lucy. I want to come home and say, Lucy, I'm home. And so I said, okay, but if we're going to keep Lucy, we have to add with diamonds because that's a baseball diamond. So that's how her name is, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. But a few days ago, I figured out a new name for her, a new nickname. It's Lucifer, Lucy-F-U-R, Lucifer, because she can be very devilish. She gave me a good old scratch right there earlier. She goes into her zoomy fits about like 5 o'clock in the afternoon and then again about midnight. So, but she's my travel cat. She's going to go with me to Rickwood. So she'll catch all the rats there.
Which is worse, the scratch or taking a foul ball off the mask?
Oh, a scratch heals pretty quickly. Oh, well, a foul ball off the mask isn't that bad because the mask takes all the impact. I mean, it can do what we call ring your chimes pretty good, but I guess I'm lucky. I have a very hard head because I've worked with umpires that have literally had to quit because they were at risk of having one too many concussions. But I guess, I mean, I've literally been hit in the back of the head with a thrown baseball, and I just turned around and tried to figure out who threw it at me so I could get him. But I've been lucky with head injuries. Most of the injuries I've gotten have been to my wrists and a couple of times to my ankles. So even with shin guards. But I'm still standing and ready to start another season, my 45th season.
Nice.
Wow. But this was wonderful, and seeing those pictures of Willie Mays, and I was so lucky that I met him here when the Giants brought the trophy, the World Series trophy here in 2014, I think it was. And Willie Mays came with it. And I had read that he didn't like speaking in public because he didn't like the sound of his voice. It was sort of, I didn't think it was high pitched, but anyway, that's what I'd read. But he spoke at this breakfast that the Giants put on at a hotel. I can't remember where, but it was a very nice affair. And he spoke and was the center of attention and was very affable and talked to everybody. And it was just so special meeting him, and glad now that I did, especially. There was nobody like him. And I always get a kick of thinking that when he was scouted, and there's a story that the scout who signed him was Ed Montague Sr., who was the father of Ed Montague Jr., a longtime National League umpire. And when Ed Montague Sr. went down to Birmingham to scout Willie, he had to do it from a rooftop so that people wouldn't know he was there to look at him. He was worried somebody, but he wasn't there to look at Willie. He was there to look at another player named Alonzo
Oh, Perry.
Perry.
Yeah.
So, and they signed Willie instead.
Hey, Perry, this is Dennis. Did you ever have Willie Mays tell you you were right?
I wish. No, I've never done a fantasy camp where Willie was there, so never
Well,
had the opportunity.
Yeah. I was at the Hall of Fame in 1999 when Yount was enshrined, and I knew Willie would probably be there. He's my hero, so I had a book along to have him autograph. And you paid the $75 and kind of stood there, and he didn't really acknowledge you much. He signed it, and you walked away. As I walked away, I said, "Thank you, Willie. I want you to know I have two heroes in life: you first, and then my wife." The woman sitting with him said, "Well, that's not right." And I said, "Well, I knew Willie first. That's why he's first." And he looked at me and said, "You're right." I could have died and gone to heaven right there. Willie Mays said I was right. So, yeah.
I bet.
Bob has a comment.
Yeah, say, Charlie, on this East-West Classic, do you have any further information on that? Is that a veterans game or is that a minor league game? And when is that?
It's an old timers exhibition game. It's the same thing that they did in Cooperstown last year.
Okay.
Team last year, the team captains were CC Sabathia and Adam Jones, and I believe that Sabathia is the guy who spearheads this event. I think he's the one who's been keeping it going and reaching out to retired black players, so they set up an East and a West team.
Yeah, I've seen Sabathia a number of public relations promos for various MLB causes lately on either streaming or on MLB channel though too. So that doesn't surprise me. Thanks.
Yep.
We have some more comments. Otherwise, what I would be happy to do is stop the recording, and anybody who wants to hang around for a while afterwards can do so.